I remember us all getting very smart and spick and span to be photographed.
But there was someone missing in the lineup, a young mechanic called Freddie Jackson. Freddie had died only days earlier, though not at the hands of the enemy. Rather, it was said he had walked into a propeller. His would be the one face missing from the photograph.
We all said we wanted a copy, and we were handed our copies. And there was quite a gasp of surprise because this young man who had been in the transport yard and had been away on leave and had died appeared in the top row, quite recognizable to us all.
To the right and behind the shoulder of the man wearing the hat is Freddie's face.
14th of July, 63, 10:15 p.m. Been down to the engine room, but never again. The eeriest place on the ship. From the time I left my cabin, I could hear footsteps following. I was scared out of my wits.
There was no movement on the ship. It was a calm night, and all of a sudden, the doorway between the captain's cabin and the bridge slammed shut at a hell of a force. Wayne described it as though somebody had deliberately slammed the door. And he got such a hell of a fright, he dropped the torch, dropped the book, and he just fled in the opposite direction. Willy-nilly, he had no idea where he was going, but finished up down in the engine room and eventually found his way back to his cabin. But he said he vowed and declared then he would never go out at night again out of his cabin.
The noises went on and on. The young American became more and more frantic. Finally, he could take no more. He left this cursed ship and was admitted to hospital, a psychiatric hospital.
The clothes I described were the clothes he was buried in. The piece of paper that he gave me signed James Cullen. She brought a letter that he wrote her when he was in the Army. It had Jimmy on that. Outside of that, the signature is identical. There was only one thing that was different. I said he had a high voice. She said, oh, no, she said. He had a deep voice like yours. Oh. Then it meant he killed himself. This way, right through the voice. Box, whatever. Anyway, this story happened to a guy like me, and as I say, it's been haunting me now close to 40 years.
Where are you? Jesus. Suddenly, everything was crazed confusion. I could hear cries for help. A woman calling from the veranda. The horses bolting away. The bull charging. It was chaos, and I panicked. I was scared. I just wanted to get out of there.
Help me! Help!
And before midnight, we reached the township, and soon after, we were the horses safely in the stables, and I was in bed.
By night, it's forbidding, forsaken. The ruins of an outpost that was devoid of humanity, devoid of hope. Ruins which are haunted by the ghosts of the damned.
It would have been the most brutal place on earth. I remember when I was young that it was compared to the concentration camps, Belsen, and the horrors here that went on.
A century and a half ago, Norfolk Island was one of Britain's most notorious penal colonies, a dumping ground for the most vicious, most violent criminals. A jail where the savagery of the inmates was more than matched by the ferocity of their keepers.
It would be called a blood-soaked island because of the blood that was let from lashings. People got sometimes 200 or 300, 400 strokes of the lash, cat o' nine tails.
I heard noises and I came upstairs to investigate, and it sounded, because you could very distinctly tell front door closing and opening because it slams, it was so heavy, and you could tell if somebody was walking in a hallway. And being downstairs, we would come upstairs to see who was in the building, because at the time the building upstairs was closed. And coming upstairs, you'd find no one.
Alton's town planner Glenn McLean is not the kind of man given to wild imagination. He's experienced it too.
You really start to feel like there's somebody right behind you. There are some physical things that happen. You feel your hair start to stand up on end. You feel that presence.
The local radio personality, Scott McKay, stayed in the town hall overnight. He thought to dispel the myth.
My impression coming in was one of skepticism, not too sure what I would find. I really didn't have a fixed thought on whether I believed in any supernatural or not. And when I left the next morning, I still wasn't too sure, but I do know that something happened.
How I felt, a thump on the cable I was standing on, and I said, "Who's down here with me?" And they said, "Nobody." And I said, "There must be somebody down here because I can feel them walking up the cable." And they said, "No, there's no one down there with you." By this time, the object had got off the cables, walked across the cables, and was going up the western side of the trench. The sun was shining brightly in the water, and there was a perfect silhouette of a hard-out diver climbing up out of the trench into the sun and just kept going. So I got out and everyone had a great laugh about it, said I'd been down there too long and, I was seeing things, and I said, well, he was there.
I thought for the first time in my life, it's time to go. I knew whatever it was in there didn't want me in there. So I put my guitar in the case and I felt my way down the steps. At the same time, with my right hand, I was trying to find the key to the lighthouse so I could get out there and lock it up and just leave. I felt uncomfortable there.
Darkness, strange noises, icy pockets of air, and not a soul to be seen. Was it the mind playing tricks, or was it something else?
Clive decided it was something else, something he couldn't explain. And as he locked up and left, the mystery of Cape Willoughby deepened. First, just as suddenly as it went out, his torch went on again. And then...
I looked back at the lighthouse and I could feel something was watching me almost from the top window. And it was... you could almost feel as though there's someone up there. It was really strange, it's quite strange.
With the fast edits, the switches from colour to black and white, it's not something you'd pick up watching a video hit show at home on television. But slow one particular image down and enhance it and see what happens. There in the background is a figure, a human figure, a figure without a face.
It is a person. It's definitely a human being, but we find that there's no... I've had looked at it closer since then, and there's no image on the face. I mean, I'm not one for getting into ghost stories, so to speak, but this has left quite an impression as to why this would appear in this particular instance.
Frank was driving Stella to her father's birthday party, a long and treacherous trip. Floodwaters blocked the main highway, so the Corbels took a detour, a very dangerous detour.
I drove down into the water. The water got higher and higher, and the engine cut out. My wife uttered a scream and put her feet up on the dashboard. And my mind was racing, what could I do?
I felt really terrified and just hoping against hope that we would get out of it. But at the time, I don't think I thought there was much chance.
If I had gotten out of the car, I would have had to swim, and I don't think I would have had a chance against the strong current. My wife was inside and she can't swim, so it was a losing situation.
Late one night, a local identity, John Farley, was stumbling home after a heavy night at one of the local taverns. His route took him along a deserted bush track near Fred Fisher's place. He came to a wooden bridge, and there, right ahead, was a sight that shocked him into sobriety. A man with a bloody head wound sitting on the bridge railing. Slowly he began beckoning, pointing to the creek below. That man was Fred Fisher, the late Fred Fisher.
The next day, a bewildered John Farley told police what he'd seen. By coincidence, at about the same time, two boys were playing around the old bridge. They stumbled on a trail of blood. That trail of blood was exactly where the ghost of Fred Fisher had pointed.
I was having some trouble in breathing, and the doctor felt I should have a complete chest x-ray of the lung.
As he sat in the reception area awaiting the results, Philip heard a small commotion among the nurses in the examining room.
The nurse that took the x-ray and the technician I was waiting in the reception room, and she's, "My God, look at this." And so I thought, my God, there must be cancer then, because of the way they're reacting. And the doctors ran in, and nurses and technicians, and they're all looking. And I thought, well, I've got to go in there. So I barged in, and I looked at it, and they says, "Take a look at this."
And there on the light board was the side x-ray of his chest. And as he got closer, Philip Rashid's heart began to pound.
First thing I looked at, I was looking for the pathology, because I know the cells and so on. And I started looking around at it because I didn't think to look at the end here, because this is where the bulk of the material was. And I was trying to see, well, do I see something there? It looked like it could be connected to cancer. And they had said there's something strange about this, but they didn't tell me where it was. But when I moved into the outer portion, then I saw, and I looked and I said, well, gee, here's something. And my God, that's my mother. That's her picture, that's her.
The sign. It had to be the sign. Look at this photo of Saida. Even the outline of her hair bun, her facial structure, the brow. For Dr. Philip Rashid, an extremely intelligent, rational, and religious man, the significance of this moment shook him.